Today, we're going to be doing a boss ranking for every single boss in Bloodborne. I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out stupid questions like, how good is their design? Do I like it? Do I think they pose much of a challenge? And in the end, that's what led to me being so indecisive about a lot of these. So I essentially just boiled it down to, how much do I like them as a whole? And then I tried to figure out why I did or did not like them. Let's just get the obvious out of the way. Bottom slot is Rom. Rom, the Vacuous Spider. Oh my god. Do you know how awful this fight is? You don't. If you haven't played this game, you have no idea how awful this fight is. The one good thing I can say about it, aside from, I guess, the design being legitimately rather chilling, is that the run back, the run to the boss is tiny. Now, is that a detriment to the area the boss is in? Absolutely. However, I think it works in favor of the boss because I always tend to die to it, and that's annoying. That's really annoying. I don't know why I always die to Rom. It's not even that challenging. I just always manage to die like 3 times, and that's frustrating. It's essentially, there's a big spider and then there's like 60 other smaller spiders that actually attack. You've got essentially 2 phases in this fight. You've got one where Rom literally just sits there and doesn't do anything. Then the whoops gotcha when Rom just teleports 2 feet to the left, and then gains attacks for some reason, spawns even more spiders, who can also essentially one-shot you if you're not careful, which is just awful. And every time you die, you have to go through this entire massive health pool. The entire massive health pool all over again. It's not interesting, it's not very interactive at all, and it's just awful. It had to be in the bottom slot. And now, for the other obvious pick. The Witches of Hemwick pose essentially no threat. The only threat they do pose is if you walk into the room with more than 1 insight, in which case they spawn Mad Ones, which are essentially just lesser enemies, which do tons of damage. I don't really know why they deal so much damage, but they do. But they don't really pose any threat, and they spend most of the fight invisible. It's really easy, and there's 2 of them. And if you kill one of them, the other can just revive if you don't kill the second one fast enough, which is just ridiculous. The run back is irritatingly long. I don't really think it needed to be, as long as it is. It's not a very fun or interactive or interesting fight. The rewards you get are kind of worth it, I guess. But overall, this is not a very good boss fight at all. Now for the other obvious pick. Mikolaj, Host of the Nightmare. What do I say about him that hasn't already been said? I legitimately don't know. So the fight with Mikolaj is less of a fight and more of just a tag simulator. He spends most of the fight just running away from you and you have to chase him, and you have to get him into specific rooms, otherwise you won't be able to do any damage to him, which is horrible. Whoever designed this boss fight should be fired out of a cannon into the sun. What was I saying again? Oh, yes. His running patterns are essentially RNG based as well. There is not really a good way of controlling where he runs and when. So you just have to hope he goes in the correct direction, and if he doesn't, well then you just have to run around for 3 more cycles and eventually you'll get him there. And then once you actually fight him, he deals like ridiculous damage. He uses arcane spells that can essentially just parry you, knock you down, so he gets essentially a free hit if you're not careful. He can 1 or 2 shot you. The fight is overly long. It feels like it didn't need to be there, but they added it in for padding, because like, you're fighting a guy with a laundry basket on his head. If you die to him, that sucks, because you just died to a guy with a laundry basket on his head. And then if you beat him, well dang, you killed a, you killed a random crazy dude you found on the street one day. And now for the other obvious pick. I swear, not all these bosses are as obvious as these first couple ones are. The living failures are exactly as they sound. They're failures. I think in lore they're failed experiments on people and something healing church blood, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point is, they are alive, kind of, sort of, not really, and they're failures. It's a group fight, which, if you haven't gathered by now, are awful. They deal ridiculous damage for something that should not deal ridiculous damage. The run back is awful. And just, it's really annoying, but I always die to these guys. I don't even know why. It's not like most of the time I'm not even doing anything wrong. It's just, oh, I shouldn't have stood there, I guess. There goes my entire health bar. There are like 4 attacks, I think. If that, 4, maybe 5. And they've got a big, like, rain meteors on you, and you can dodge it by just standing. Like, you don't even have to you don't even have to dodge. You just stand in a specific spot, and there's no way it's ever gonna hit you. Their visual designs are not very appealing to me, which, okay, I guess that's kind of the point. They're not meant to be, like, super attractive, going on People magazine. No, that'd be ridiculous. That would kind of defeat the entire purpose of the game. For what they are, I do not like their design. I think it kind of sells what they're going for, but not really. I feel like it could have been sold a little bit more, with a little bit more compelling designs for the creatures, as well as maybe having a bit of variance between them, instead of just having one model for all, like, 80 of them. So I think it would have been really nice if there were multiple different models, plus then you could also tell which ones were close to death and which ones had full health. Because of course, they share a health bar, but also, if you deal enough damage to one of them, it dies. Which is, okay, that's kinda neat, I guess. That's kinda neat. But the issue is, there is no way to tell exactly which enemy you're hitting and how much health they have. And now, we have the last obvious pick. The Celestial Emissary. This is another group fight. This is great. This is such a forgettable boss. When playing through this game, again, for footage, I completely forgot to record footage for this. The footage you are seeing in the background is by the YouTube channel Boss Fight Database, and that is linked in the description down below. Anyway, so it's a group fight. One of the bosses is hidden among other non-boss enemies, but it has the same model. It's essentially just a group of blue blobby dudes that you've seen all over, but one of them just has a boss-sized health bar. And then it grows for some reason, which kind of defeats the entire purpose of the fight, is because it's trying to figure out which one is the guy you're supposed to be hitting and which one is the guy you're not supposed to be hitting. So the amygdala essentially is just one of those bosses in Zelda where you just have to shoot the eyeball at the right time, because the biggest weak point is the head, which is like 80 feet above the ground the entire fight, which is just... sure, whatever. And then if you don't hit the head, you deal 12 damage to the legs, and reduced damage for the arms. Now that's kind of fun, I guess. It's a limbed boss fight, which means you can just essentially break its limbs, and then you'll deal more damage to those limbs, but this doesn't apply to the legs, it just applies to the arms, which doesn't make sense, but who am I to criticize, I guess? I've never designed an elder god. This one is guarded by the Celestial Emissary. It feels like the Celestial Emissary was a joke fight, leading you to the real boss fight of the area, which doesn't really make sense because this boss fight is hidden, and also it's Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos. So she's a lot like the amygdala, but it's got more tentacles and doesn't have reduced damage. So the fight takes less time and it's more fun because of it. However, I do not know of a single attack that this boss uses because it is so forgettable, and it is over so quickly. If you stand behind it, you can just keep hitting it, and she can't turn around, essentially. It's kind of embarrassing. Now, this is one that I'm not sure is a controversial opinion, because it's the Moon Presence. The Moon Presence is a hidden final boss, which usually they're really good. I love hidden final bosses. I love them. I don't love the moon presence. It's just a very disappointing final boss. It feels rather generic in its attacks, aside from just a couple of them that don't really do anything. You've got essentially just basic claw swipes, which are shown by every other beast in the game, which this is not a beast, so I don't really think it should be doing that. It's got a really cool design. I must say the design is legitimately awesome. I love the design, and the theme is not bad. The arena is really nice, but it's using another boss's arena that you'll get to later, so I guess you get half points, Moon Presence. The fight itself is rather enjoyable. It just feels it feels really easy, especially for a hidden final boss. The health pool is tiny, and it doesn't really do as much damage as I think it should be to make up for the small health pool. You tried, Moon Presence. I just wish you were better. Oh god, this one's just a nothing fight, honestly. What do I even say about Parl? Ugh. I guess the lightning's kind of a neat gimmick. Like, not much else uses lightning in the game, I guess, but the boss arena is not bad, and the reveal of the boss being just an actual living skeleton is pretty good. Like, you walk into this vast open room and you're like, man, that's a skeleton on the ground, and then, oh my god, the skeleton's getting up. Is it kind of obvious in retrospect? Yes, because it's obviously a boss room, but for a first impression, very good. The design isn't terrible, and the theme is actually really good. The health pool feels a little bit small, and you can easily stagger him. It's like you're smashing bone. Probably because you are. And that is all I have to say about Parl. Are there dedicated Parl fans out there? I have no idea. If I've upset any Parl fans, please let me know. And a response will be given to you in 6 to 7 business days. Now, these next two I'm actually going to be covering together because they are the same boss, and if you've played Bloodborne, you know what I'm going to say. It's Cleric Beast and Lawrence, the First Vicar. Cleric Beast has some neat attacks and some ideas that get expanded upon with Lawrence, because Lawrence is on fire, and that's just kinda neat. He's also got a grab attack, they both do, but that sucks, because grapple attacks are awful in this game, and in every Souls game, they're just the worst. Objectively. Overall, I think I kind of prefer Lawrence due to it being a more dynamic fight and changes in phases, like his legs exploding for reasons. That's never really explained. He's just on fire and his legs sometimes explode, I guess. It's really a toss-up between the two and largely depends on how I'm feeling, so for this list I'm going to put Cleric Beast at number 12 and Lawrence at number 11. This next fight was probably one of the hardest for me to rank. I don't entirely know how I feel about them, because it's a group fight, which, as I've said previously, I really don't like. But also, it's a fairly well done group fight, and I think they work together really well, so I'm gonna put them just above halfway. So the Shadows of Yharnam have a rather small health pool altogether, and is a trio fight where each of them shores up the weaknesses of the others. Then their heads explode into snakes, and then they kinda just do their own thing. I don't really like the second phase very much. It's not a very difficult fight. It's never one that's ever really given me any trouble, and they can be parried. Always a plus. I love parrying. Parrying is great. The run back is terrible. I don't know if I'm factoring the run back into the actual boss ranking. Wait, this is my video. I make up the criteria, and boss run backs count. Boss run backs count, and this one is awful. So, I'm sorry, Mr. of Yharnam, Mr. of Yharnam, and Mr. of Yharnam, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to stick to 10th place. You know, actually, I think this one was harder for me to rank, because it's got a solid design, I guess, but it's also poisoned, and the boss runback is meh. But the attacks are fine, the boss arena's solid, and the lore is really good. Also, it's not very difficult, and it can be easily cheesed. The Blood-Starved Beast is one of the first bosses in the game. I think the second or third one you're technically supposed to fight. and is in Old Yarnum. So, the lore of Old Yarnum is very complex, I think, and so I'm not going to get into it, but essentially, there was a plague called the Ashen Blood, and it overtook the city, and the hunters, like, killed everyone and burned everything to the ground, and so the blood-starved beast is actually a flayed beast that was part of the massacre. That's why it does poison damage, because of the Ashen Blood plague, which is just really neat. I think that's super cool. Now, once again, I hate poison. I've never liked poison in any game ever. I think it works in this particular fight. I vastly prefer the first and second phases to the third one, because in the third phase, you essentially just gain poison status by standing near it, which is not very fun for me, at least. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe there are people who enjoy getting poisoned by standing in the wrong place. I don't know, I'm not here to judge, but this is my list, and I don't like being poisoned. Oh, Jesus, I can already tell this isn't gonna go over well. This is a fight many would place highest, like, #1 spot, and yeah, I disagree. The final fight of the Bloodborne Old Hunters DLC is the Orphan of Cause, and man, is it sure a fight. Firstly, getting in with the negative, I'm not a really big fan of the design of the Orphan, because it just feels kind of bland. Like, okay, sure, you're fighting me with your own sharpened placenta. Wow, that is a phrase I never thought I'd have to say, but when you're also in a game with a man fused to his horse through some weird blood magic, like 3 other elder gods, and guys whose heads explode into snakes, it kind of feels a little boring when you're just fighting some guy. I know someone who'd like to kill a child, though. You might be asking yourself, is it this low because I find it difficult? No, it is not. I enjoy a good bit of difficulty in this game. Now, is it the only factor I base this on? No. You may have noticed that some of the earlier bosses were noted as easy, which just being an easy boss does not really work against you, as you'll see later in the list. But if you don't really have much else going for you, it definitely doesn't help. Now, I actually beat this boss first try in my first save. Going back to it in later saves and New Game Plus and whatnot, the difficulty feels a little bit artificially jacked up, with just ridiculous damage. Every attack, it deals loads of damage. Like, I'm talking quarter of your health bar, maybe even half from a full health gauge. The boss arena, though, is actually pretty nice. The moon is obscured by shipwrecks in the background, and the seaside theme is something that's only really ever seen in this boss, which, that is good. I especially like the skybox of the area. That is the big part that I like about it. I don't really think that that's enough to weigh out all the bad in this case. Murgo's Wet Nurse is mostly carried by the absolutely amazing design and amazing boss theme and fantastic arena, because the fight itself is rather easy. Unfortunately, it feels like it should go on for longer, but it's got such a small health pool that you don't see most of the attacks, which is a shame, because the 6-sword fighting style, that's so cool! I want to use 6 swords, but I only have 2 hands, not 6. I don't actually know if Murgo's Wet Nurse has hands. Anyway, the fight is a little bit easy, unfortunately, which isn't that much of a detractor in this case, but it does take a meaningful hit. The cloning gimmick is also weird, and kind of doesn't really come up, but it's kind of interesting. I personally enjoy it, though it can lead to a couple annoying situations where you get just comboed to death by both of them, which is less fun. However, because it is an endgame boss, and it is a little bit easier than most of the endgame bosses, here I am complaining about difficulty again. I promise you, I'm not basing it off of difficulty. I feel like the difficulty doesn't affect it as much, but it does still have an effect, because it is an endgame boss. It is the penultimate fight. So, I actually don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but I really do like Martyr Ligarius. Ligarius, I don't know, I'm gonna pronounce it Ligarius because I am a contrarian. The boss arena, first up, is really good! I always love the aesthetic of snow-covered gothic castles, and Cainhurst Castle is one of the best areas in the game, one of the best snow-covered gothic castles in video games. Is that a very wide pool? Probably not, but it's really good. Now, maybe it's just the vile blood in me, but I really like beating up the executioners. Now, as for his attacks, his magic attacks have a really nice effect, and I'm always a fan of using scythes and scythe-like weapons, but his parry windows feel a little bit weird. I feel like I'm never able to parry him no matter how well I time it. Also, I'm not the biggest fan of the boss theme, and the weird extra attacks with a knife thing feel a little bit tacked on, and I don't feel like they do as much as they should. Now, coming into the top 5, where, I mean, if you've played the game, you essentially already know. You know who's in the top 5. So let me talk to you about Vicar Amelie. First up, I really like her design. I love this design, and I have no idea why. I just think she's neat. She's the first boss where you can destroy their limbs for extra damage, which is a really nice mechanic, and it's introduced and taught really well in this fight. Her attacks fit her lore of just turning into a beast and not knowing how beasts work. She feels a little bit more uncontrolled than some of the other beasts and more frantic. Like, she does not know how to work with this new body, which is so cool! She's one of the best beast bosses in the game, and her boss theme and arena are just so good too. Like, almost everything about this boss is amazing, except for the fact that she can heal. Apparently. The first time I fought her, and every time since, I've never encountered her healing. But I know it exists. Apparently. I don't know if that's a detriment or not, actually. I don't know if it's a detriment that I haven't encountered it, or a detriment that it exists at all. And that's for you to decide. Insert PBS. What was this joke? Why did I write this? We just had one of the best beast bosses in the game. Now we have the best beast boss in the game. That was really hard to say. Wow. He is a masterclass in beast boss design, and I'm probably angering 1,300 people by having him so low, but I do not care. This is my list, and I do my own opinions. His design is really interesting, and his boss arena is very nice set dressing, and that theme is absolutely gorgeous. It's a really nice dramatic fight, and it's one of the most dynamic in the game. And that phase transition, the phase transition is absolutely fantastic. Not many bosses get mid-fight cutscenes, and this is really good. The moveset of both phases is glorious, each move flowing into one another really well, and creating a magnificent fight all around. And when he switches phases, he changes his posture, because he sees his Holy Moonlight Sword, the guide, his one true love or whatever, and he regains a little bit of his humanity. So he stands up straighter, acts more human, does not give in to the beast side as much, which is really nice. It's such a nice touch. Now, after all this praise, you might be asking why he's in 4th place. Is it because you're bad at fighting him? Is it because you keep dying? Is it because you're angry? Well, sure, I am bad at fighting him. But that's not why. He's really only down this low because, well, he is the best beast boss. I personally prefer other types of bosses, and so he has to settle for top 5 instead of the best. As much as I hate to do this, but unfortunately, Lady Maria is 3rd place. Her design is amazing, her arena is fantastic, and the boss theme is just, so good. You can see her personality and her character show through in the way she moves and the way she attacks, and in the pre-fight cutscene, which is neat. It's neat that she shows her character because, man oh man, she has one of those. Most bosses in this game cannot say that. I always love me some blood attacks, especially as a fellow vile blood. Now, I really love parrying, and parries are key in this fight, but also it trivializes the fight a little bit, which I don't love. Her health is a little bit too low, and she's unfortunately easy, one of the easier DLC bosses. It would have been neat if the blood attacks did actually hurt her like they do in the actual game, but I totally understand why. She's already got like 12 health, and this would definitely not help the difficulty. But if she had just a little bit more health and a little bit of a smaller parry window, she would easily rocket up to 1st place. I could go on a spiel about how, this number 2, it's like the scariest number or something, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to introduce it. And if you're sad, good. Number 2 on my list is Father Gascoigne. I love Hunter boss fights, and he's not very gimmicky, which is always a plus. I don't really like gimmick fights. He shows his character, which he has one of those, and it shows him even in beast form. Even in beast form, he shows his character. He has quite a bit of the story from the get-go, and only gets deeper from there, and he's really enjoyable for a fight, especially for the first real fight in the game. His design is fantastic, his arena is amazing, and let me tell you, this is probably my favorite boss theme in the entire game. I find myself getting distracted by the music when I'm fighting him, so he kills him, and that is only partially a joke. I just get too into the groove of the music, and I forget to dodge an attack and then I die. Which, totally on me. Like, that doesn't even feel like an unfair thing. Like, that is just completely on me. So thank you, Father G. To describe Gehrman in one sentence, he is like if Gascoigne was combined with Maria, which is amazing. It feels like a frantic fight because it is. You are fighting this guy who's been sitting there the entire game, watching you and watching your progress. As I said before, I love scythes as a weapon, and Gehrman's scythe is probably one of the best scythes in any media ever. His fighting style is amazing, and I love the fact that he can just parry you like you can parry him. He shows his character really well, while also showing that he's being at least partially controlled by the moon presence to make him even more powerful. I feel like I should retroactively remove another point from the moon presence for getting me hyped for this Elder God's power in another way before being such a letdown. So the design is phenomenal, the boss theme is amazing, and the arena is the best in the game. Undeniably, for me, Gehrman is the best fight in the game. Well, that was a long video, wasn't it? You're still here? Why are you still here? Why? Get out of here. Get out of here. Subscribe, I guess, whatever.